Well, hello. Today is Sunday, May the 30th, and this is Life Matters. Let's talk about it. Well, hello, everybody. I am Michele Johnson, and I am your host. This is Life Matters with Michele. You know, this is where we talk about all things that matter in our community. We talk about health. We talk about faith. We talk about finances. We talk about it all. And so today we are talking about anxiety. We are talking with our very special guest, Miss Ashley Epiphany Hodges. And this is going to be an amazing show. I want to remind each and every one of you, those who are out there in our listening audience, that you can post your questions, you can post your comments, you can post all of the questions that you want asked from our very special guest. So once again, it is Life Matters with Michele. I am your host, Michele Johnson, and our special guest is Miss Ashley Epiphany Hodges. Please say hello to the people.
Hi, everybody.
How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Just recently getting over sinuses for the first time ever in my life. That was a culture shock, but I am thankful to be here.
Okay, so we're having a little technical difficulties. There's a big delay. When you speak, or I can't hear you. I'm not sure what happened when we lost you earlier, but I can't hear you all the way. So hopefully that will rectify itself. In the process, I will read your bio. There's quite a lengthy bio, everyone, so I'm just going to do it in part because it's like 2 pages long. But Miss Ashley Epiphany Hodges has energy and a spirit that shines through her God-given talents. She is an artist, a speaker, a creativity coach. Epiphany was bestowed upon Ashley some years ago, given that she has experienced consistent breakthroughs in her personal and in her professional life. And so we are just excited to talk with her. Her unyielding mission and movement is to build on the premise from struggle to triumph. She strives to carry forth a message of restoration that encourages people to believe in themselves while identifying their core purpose in life. And we know that is very important. And while Epiphany extends her service to people of all ages, she is especially driven to impact the next generation of youth and young adults, aiming to give them hope while teaching them to free themselves from emotional bondage, unhealthy people, and environments of other stressors. And because of her understanding with emotional struggles and issues and not having freedom to have healthy conversations, she created her business called Epiphany Enterprises, LLC. And so she has also found success as an arts department coordinator, as a poet, a youth development interventionist, a workshop facilitator, a creative director, along with other closely assigned and aligned roles. Her diverse background has afforded her the opportunity to have success that some would never, ever think about in their lifetime. Poetry has been a catalyst for many of her growing list of opportunities, including performances at the Lincoln Center, the Kennedy Center, Busboys and Poets, and other notable platforms, speaking on Good Morning Washington, Speak Out Radio, as well as the Lonnie Hunter Show. Please say hello once again to the people, Miss Epiphany.
Everybody, can you hear me? Is this better?
Yes, that's much better. Thank you so much for making the adjustment. How are you doing today?
I'm well. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. I'm so excited to have you on the show. And so today we are talking to you about anxiety. And then we also talked about the process of becoming. So I kind of conjoined the two. So anxiety and the process of becoming. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, I know I just read your bio, but give us a lead into the anxiety piece. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what your experiences have been that have led you to be, I'm going to say, an SME or a subject matter expert in anxiety.
Well, the simple answer to that is I've had to rebuild my life over more times than you could imagine before the age of 30. And I really just got to the point where I had to understand what were the things that were stopping me, and what was the reason that I was not living my life to the fullest. We all have potential, but just because we have potential doesn't it doesn't guarantee that we will ever reach it in this lifetime. And so I wanted to reach my full potential in my lifetime, and I wanted to leave a legacy of after I had reached that potential. So that's how I got to this whole anxiety, all these emotions, getting it, and more specifically how I got into working with the young people, because my whole focus was, if we could get ahead of this curve, you won't be 30 and on somebody's couch. You won't be 40 and have missed and messed up most of your life if we can get ahead of this curve.
Awesome, awesome. So if you can explain to us, because I like for people to have a working knowledge whenever we're talking on this show, because everybody's purview or everybody's perspective or everybody's understanding of various terms is different. So give us your perspective or a working definition of what anxiety is and why it is important that we need to pay attention to it. You're muted. You're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. These buttons are so sensitive. I apologize. My definition of anxiety is the inability to make decisions based on the stressors in your environment. And so that's like the plainest way that I can say it. The plainest definition I can give you.
You muted yourself. You don't have to. You don't have to touch your buttons.
I'm sorry. That's the most relevant definition that I could give you. If you look at Google, Google will tell you that anxiety is, fear and uncertainty and all those things. But really, what it is, it's the inability to make a sound decision based on your experiences and the environments that you're in. That's what I would define anxiety as.
Oh, okay. So to hear that definition, I will say that a lot of people misutilize that term, because for me, I'll say I get anxiety if there's too much clutter. So when my husband and I were packing up our house in Maryland and preparing to move out of state, I had anxiety because boxes were all over the place, and it was just it just felt like the house was closing in on me. So that's my idea of anxiety. Other people may say anxiety is their inability to center themselves, or there's this heightened level of what I call hypersensitivity, or hyper awareness of their own emotions or whatever. So that's a good definition, because again, everybody doesn't see anxiety the same way. So why is it important that we're made aware of what anxiety is and where it is in our lives? Because it lands at different places in our lives, because we know that lives have ebbs and flow. So where does it land? How do we handle it when it lands in our lives?
Right. So my personal thought is that being aware of anxiety is important because it really just relates to every aspect of your life. More specifically, I think the biggest way that anxiety affects, or the biggest thing that anxiety affects in our lives, is our communication. You know, a lot of times we participate in behaviors or we react because we don't have the ability to communicate well about things, about what we are feeling. And so when we can understand and identify our feelings, we can better communicate that. So, for
Mhm.
example, I tell all of my friends, I know for a fact that I'm sensitive. Things that you can't say to me in a certain way because I will respond a certain way, right? And I'm like,
Right.
listen, I grew up, you know, I'm cool now, but I grew up in the hood, right? So we have a whole different response. I learned a whole different. I have a whole different perspective on life. I learned a whole different set of behaviors. I've been around a whole different set of people, and when sometimes when you say these things based on what I know, it means this, and it means that I need to react this way. But until I can fully communicate that to you, then it's really just, I'm anxious all the time because I feel like we're always going to butt heads, or we're always going to meet this place in the road where we don't understand each other. And I feel like I'm clearly communicating. You feel like I'm overreacting, and we're just not able to see eye to eye in the moment.
And that does cause anxiety, because if you're trying to convey something to somebody and in your head it sounds a certain way, but the way the other person is receiving it. Because when we talk about communication, we talk about listening skills, we talk about, being able to communicate well, who's the receptor, who's the giver, what's happening in translation. And so if you're trying to convey something to somebody and your heart is saying it one way and they're receiving it another way, you can get anxious because you're like, okay, now I'm going to have to explain it. Now I'm going to have to do this. You have to do all of these double steps for them to get it, where in your head it's making sense. It's making sense in your head,
Right.
right? So we have a question from our audience that says, what are some myths about Black mental health,
Right. I
including
think there's a bit of a
anxiety? Yeah, there's a delay on your side. So we're talking, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about anxiety. We're talking with Miss Ashley Epiphany, and we're talking about anxiety and the process of becoming. And one of our questions was, what are some myths about Black mental health, including
myths.
anxiety, that may prevent people from seeking care? And so if I can jump in and just basically try to answer that question in the absence of our guests, some of the myths are that essentially anxiety is not something that we as Black people talk about. Because I know growing up in our community, we're told not to tell people our business. We're told not to share our lives. We're told not to tell, where our weaknesses are or where our frailties are. And then when we find that we have to share those things with somebody else, or we have to give ourselves over and be vulnerable, anxiety can show up. And so anxiety happens across all races, across all denominations, across all cultures. And so I don't think it affects any one body of people than the other. But I will say that anxiety is something that is real. A lot of people think people who have anxiety are overreacting. They are not being realistic. But in the mind, the heart, the spirit of the person who's experiencing anxiety, it is very real. And so what may be culturally unacceptable in one person's life, um, anxiety is still a real reality to them. And the same thing on the other side. And so when I tell people, I'm anxious about this, and I know the Bible says be anxious for nothing, and that is true. But we live in a real world where life affects us, and sometimes it infects us to the degree that it manifests itself in us not being able to handle life, or handle stressors, or handle things that may be simple to other people. So your inability to be able to balance life and the ebbs and flows of life can show up in anxiety. It can show up in anxiety. Are you back with us?
I am. Can you hear me? I am like
I
kind
can
of.
hear you. I just can't see you. So what? Another question from the audience is: what are some of the triggers of anxiety?
Ooh. Um, what I've found is that one of the main triggers of anxiety is unsafe community, or being around people who are not able to foster your meekness, right? Meek with an M, not with the W. Your meekness, right? Because there's a level of softness that each and every person has. And to go back to your point about how people feel like we're overreacting. Studies actually show that the first emotion that we go to is anger. Even if we are afraid, the first emotion that we will show or display is anger. And so there's always this where you're overreacting, or it's not that serious, and it could very well be that serious. It's so serious to the person that has anxiety that I feel that I have to defend myself. And because I've only known to defend myself with my anger, I'm going to let my anger show. Um,
Hmm.
and so to go back to your question of, and what was your question again? I'm sorry.
Well, the second question was, what are the triggers of anxiety? But prior to that, we were talking about some of the myths about Black mental health and anxiety. What
Yeah.
keeps what keeps people from seeking care?
Got you. So some of the triggers of anxiety, some of the triggers for anxiety is to feel that you're not heard. That's another. I would say the second thing is to feel that you're not heard. Everybody wants a voice. Everybody wants to be empowered. We live in such a community, and we live in such a world where everybody is, being an advocate for whatever their perceived platform is, and the biggest thing that we have not learned, or that people are still in the process of learning, is how to healthily be an advocate for yourself, how to healthily be an advocate for the things you think that people are depriving you of, that you are rightfully, that you have the ability, and you absolutely deserve to get from people. I would say another myth about anxiety, and we're still talking about the myths of anxiety, right? Oh, I'm sorry.
Mhm. No, that's fine.
So I would say another trigger of anxiety is feeling alone. And a lot of people isolate themselves because they feel alone. They feel like nobody understands me. Nobody's gonna, somebody always, or people always misunderstand me. Whenever I express myself, people always misunderstand me. So I just rather not deal with anybody. I just rather not, because nobody's ever gonna get me. Nobody's ever gonna, understand me. I'm unique, and I'm this and I'm that. And we bring up all of these things, which I call these barriers, these walls. I teach my children walls not only keep you in, but they keep people out, right? And so
Yeah.
not everybody doesn't deserve access to you. You just have to learn how to be able to qualify who gets access to you and who doesn't. And that just happens over the span of knowing yourself, knowing what you deserve, and knowing who is going to help you push you forward in life. And I do want to go back to that question about the myths of anxiety. I would say in the African American culture, specifically with the women, one of the myths is that we're always angry. And it's not necessarily that we're always angry. Yes, we do have angers. Yes, we do have moments of frustration, but so do women of other cultures. However, we have the heaviest load to carry. And because if we say it in a very nice way, we feel, now I got to go back, because now we as African American feel, well, I'm in here, I'm being nice, and ain't nobody listening to me. As soon as I start yelling and hollering, now everybody listening. Now everybody want to do what I say. But that's a perception in itself. But the thing about it is, we're not angry. We just want to be heard. We want to be heard the first time. We don't like to repeat ourselves. We don't like to find ourselves in these things again. Specifically in the household. We like our houses a certain way. We like our people a certain way. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's really just all this tie between communication, perception, and then how you send those messages out.
Awesome, awesome. Somebody asked, well, someone made the statement, and you can qualify this or not. Anxiety, is it a personal choice or a personal problem?
Ha. Is anxiety a personal choice or a personal problem? I would say both. I would err on the side of both. I would say it's a personal problem until you understand how it becomes a personal choice, right? And so a lot of times, and this is why I love what I do. I love this so much. I love just bringing people into these safe ways to have this conversation, because a lot of times it's really just that we're defensive. We're defensive about the things that we don't like about ourselves, and we're trying to give to someone, and they're not being compassionate enough to us, and we feel like they're abandoning us in our moment. We feel like they're not being who we need them to be. But the honest to God truth is that it's really a matter of that projection. Like, I don't like this about me, so I perceive that when you don't accept it, you don't like it about me either.
Mm, wow. That's good stuff right there. And so when we look at anxiety, and I was talking a little bit when we lost you there for a moment, and you said something about it yourself. That anxiety, I mean, it doesn't discriminate. There is no cultural barrier, or one particular culture that holds anxiety more true than the other, because it affects everybody. Because as long as you're living life, as long as you are contending with the ebbs and flows of life, there's always a propensity or an opportunity for anxiety to grip you. Would you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree with that. I would agree with that, which is, and I agree with it so much that I'm an advocate for having that conversation, because even with the work that I'm doing, even with being out and the knowledge that I have, it doesn't prevent anxiety from showing up, but when it does show up, I know, oh, okay, this is anxiety. And I know that this is anxiety because when I get anxious, I do this. When I get anxious, I don't want to do this. When I get anxious, I don't want to be here. When I get anxious, I don't want to da 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 da. So now that I recognize, or now that I'm aware, I'm brought into that knowledge. And not only do I have the knowledge, but now I can see, I have the vision or the foresight for it. Now when it comes, I'm like, oh, okay, okay, cool. It's not, it actually loses its power the more aware I am of it, because now it's like, okay, well, you're not going to stop me though. And I apologize. I don't want to come off too abrupt, but
You're fine.
good, right? So we have that demeanor, like, you're not gonna stop me though, or you're not, who gonna check me? Like anxiety, you can't check me right now, because I recognize you for who you are and what you have taken from me for so long, that I'm gaining all this territory back, and whether you like it or not, anxiety, you gotta go.
And essentially, and I'm gonna have to drop in on this part, because anxiety is a spirit, right?
Yes.
It's when we put it in a spiritual context, some of the things that we grapple with the most are attached to spiritual warfare. They're attached to strongholds. They're attached to, generational curses and things of that nature. And you said something. You said, you're going to it loses its power when you're aware of it. We say the same thing when you go to AA, when you go to NA, any of those places. You get your power back when you call that thing out, when you speak to that thing and make it aware that it's there. Now, even though I may be living with it, it does not have to be my life. You know what I mean? And so I think that's very important for us to understand that, when we're able to take what we're experiencing, give it a name, give it a place, and then be able to conquer it from there. So, because until I know I have a problem, I'm not going to be able to conquer it. Until I'm aware that this thing is trying to hijack my life, it's going to continue to do that. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that is spiritual warfare. And I think a lot of people don't recognize it, and they will manifest in anger. They will manifest in, being disruptive and all kinds of different behaviors, because they're not aware of what's going on with them, not just naturally, but spiritually. And, we have to be aware of what's going on in, the principalities and all of these different things in high places. And, for those of you who are not spiritual or don't read the Bible or anything like that, I can't apologize, but I'm gonna try to explain it to you. But we live in a posture where we live in a world where we're up against spiritual warfare. We fight a very real enemy, of our souls, of our spirit, who affects our whole life. And so when we become aware of that spiritual entity, that interruption, that, whatever that thing may be, whether it's anxiety, depression, overeating, gluttony, whatever it is, we have to speak to that spirit, give it a name, and make it aware that I see you, but you don't have me. I'm going, with God's help, I'm going to work through this particular thing right here. And you don't get to triumph over me because I am more than a conqueror, even over you.
I think that was beautifully put. I think I want to piggyback on that and say that a lot of times we are taught a lot of spirituality and not a lot of practicality. And so if we can learn to couple the two, because it is very much a spiritual thing and a spiritual war as much it is as much as it is some very practical things that you will have to put into place. I know for a certain that anxiety is absolutely tied to fear, and I know that there's a scripture that says that we are not given the spirit of fear. And so when you say that anxiety is a spiritual thing, that is where the reference point for that is. And this is just for people that are watching. So for all of my logical thinking people, I got y'all, because I'm very much logical, and I had to really, really, really learn how to embrace my spirituality and my spiritual walk with God, even when it didn't make sense, But there are still some things that pinpoint. There's a lot of things about spirituality that will pinpoint and that will help your logic and help you to practically walk out these things and these processes so that you can be the overcomer that God has called you to be in this world. And there is also a scripture that says that the greater one lives in us. And so that means that sometimes, it really is just, you have to tap into that power, right? And so even for the people that are watching, if you don't believe in God, one thing, that the way that I love that my pastors put this is that you can always agree that there's good and evil in the earth. And so
Yeah.
where does good come from and where does evil come from? And until you know that, then you cannot fight properly until you have the proper knowledge and you have the proper education, you have the proper resources, and you are properly able to carry that out. So that's that.
Absolutely. And I think when you said anxiety is a manifest is actually a sister, or is coupled with fear. Our anxiety comes from fear, and the Bible says you perish for lack of knowledge. So if you don't know, you won't know, and as a result, your life is going to be wrapped in fear. Your life is going to be wrapped in anxiety, and it's very true that we have the natural side and the spiritual side. But if you don't have the tools by which to fight, let's take David, for instance. They thought that he was going to have to fight, the Philistine with somebody else's armor, but he took the tool that he had, which was a slingshot and 5 smooth stones, and he killed a Philistine giant. And so we have to know what tools are going to work for us.
Right.
Everybody's tools are not the same. I may be a prayer warrior, which I am, but somebody else may not. They may not pray like me, but what other tools can you use? What other tools do you have in your arsenal within your reach, whether that tool be a person, whether it be a book, whether it be a class, whether it be a therapy session? What tools do they have at their disposal that can help them to overcome and to acknowledge and to be able to circumvent the consequences, if you will, or the results of being anxious? You know what I mean? So it's vitally important that we know what we have at our disposal. We have a question from the audience that says, how do you was two different God, it's two questions. All right. So how do you address anxiety under the umbrella of mental health, particularly mid-pandemic and after the pandemic? Because you and I both know that anxiety went through the roof when people couldn't get out.
Right. Right. Yeah, I know. I unfortunately, I do apologize to all of my extroverts. I could not understand because I am an introvert, so I thoroughly enjoyed my time indoors. But what I would say to that question is that you have to. It's actually a twofold answer. So release the need to be perfect, and then release your expectations. Because what I am learning is that a lot of the anxiety that we bring upon ourselves, and so this goes back to that question of is it a personal problem or is it a personal choice? Now it becomes a choice when we start to worry about what we thought it should look like. And anybody that has lived life long enough knows that a man plans his ways. Oh Lord, yes Lord. Right? So anybody that has been living long enough knows that sometimes that straight line that we wanted to walk is not going to look like a straight line. It's going to look like a couple of loops. It's going to look like a couple of dashes. It's going to look like some X's, but it will not stop us from getting to where we are destined to be. And so the reason why you have to release your expectations, and I just really want to break everything down for you. I'm not really a cliche person, and this is why I study so much, because I've heard cliches all my life and they still haven't helped me. Right. So I'm not a cliche person. So the reason why you have to let go of your expectations is because when you are open to the process and open to knowing that you're going to get to where you are destined to be, you understand that the process is working things in you and working things out of you. And the process is also working things for you. Right. And so let's go back to this David situation. Now, remember, when David was called king, he didn't automatically get sent to the throne after he got anointed as king. He went
Nope.
to the field as a shepherd, and there were a series of things that he had to go through before he ever even got the throne. And the most traumatic, if we want to keep with our trauma and mental health talk, the most traumatic thing that David through was the person whose place he was supposed to take was trying to kill him and had every resource in the world to kill him. A king
Exactly.
trying to kill him. And in those days and times, who's going to reject the king? Who's going to go against the king? So
Nobody.
I got a little passionate about that one, but I
But
just
it's
want to.
okay. It's okay because you said something good because when we're studying David, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but I had to jump in there. When we're studying David, David was around 12 years old when he was anointed. He didn't take the throne until he was in his 20s. And so he had to be proven. He had to be stretched. He had to deal with life and its issues. And yes, he had to serve a king who was jealous and competitive and who tried to kill him on several occasions because he was king. He thought that he should be better than David, but people were touting David's good acts over King Saul. And
Right.
so, we have to look at the point that there is process to getting where you're going, but you cannot allow the stressors and other people and all of these different things to derail you. And you're right, life is not linear.
Right.
It's not a straight line. It
Right.
goes up, down. You got backups. You got to go 3 steps forward, 10 steps back, turn around, clap, clap, clap.
Right. Right. I think one thing that's important to remember about anybody that we read in the Bible is one that these are actual people. These weren't like characters. These are actual people who lived out actual things that they had to overcome. But the biggest reason why we learn about them is because of the posture of their heart.
Yeah.
And that is the most important thing. And if you want to talk about anxiety, you as it relates to your heart, anxiety weighs your heart down, right? And so the expectations that we have, those things begin to weigh our heart down. And what it does is it changes our perspective and our perception of the life that God said that we can live. Now, this is why, again, I said I've had to rebuild my life so many times over because I kept losing heart. And there's a scripture that says something like, if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is too small, right? And
Yeah.
so it's all about the strength, and strength comes from your heart. Like, that's your vital point. That's the vitality. All your major veins are there. So if the things that are happening in your life can continue to affect your major veins, then yes, you will be stopped. And yes, you will have those things. But yes, you can also overcome when you have the right knowledge and when you have the right people around you and when you are able to give voice to that thing and not have it come back to taunt you, but have words come back to be life to you. So again, I'm past the cliches. So the words that we speak are spirit and they are life. And so the
Mm-hmm.
we give life to them by the words that we speak. And I just want to go a little bit deeper. It's not even the words that most of the times we physically speak, it's the words that we say in our heart. Because if we're
Yeah.
talking about this, we're talking about becoming, right? Becoming is to walk into who God has called you to be. And so there's a God alignment that has to happen as well as a natural alignment that has to happen, not just with self, but you have to also be in alignment with God. And with when you come into alignment with God, it's the things that's in your heart. It's the communication that you have in your heart with God, because God knows everything, even the things that are in your heart. Again, why do you think that God would it doesn't even make sense that somebody that's 12 years old would get anointed for somebody who's already ruling as king. And if you want to go back, he didn't even want his people to have a king. He gave them the king because the people wanted the king. So God
Yes.
is always, he's never going to allow you to be in a position to hurt people, even including yourself. And so for all of those that feel like you're stopped up, you're held up, anything like that, just take a minute, take a deep little breath. Y'all know we got these meditation little practice going and count in, deep breath, count to 4, let it out. Okay, take a deep breath, little baby, and understand that God is never going to put you in a relationship. He's never going to put you in a position. He's never going to put you in a predicament where it causes you to lose heart, because
Right.
above anything else, that's all God wants, your heart.
That's it. Because your heart, out of the heart flow the issues of life, right?
And
And
if you can
so,
remain in alignment with God, the different processes and throughout the different experiences in your life, the issues will not, they won't really be issues. There'll be things that you have learned. There'll be experiences that you can share with other people. There'll be hands that you can hold out to bring other people up as you go along as well. But until we get into that alignment with self and with God, then you will be held up, because there's some learning that you have to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with learning. And so the thing about it too is you're not in competition with anybody. We're so in a rush to get to these places. And I got to tell you, like my mentor told me, she asked me, she said, well, who are you in competition with? Because the way she said it, it was so compassionate, so loving, but I was like, dang, she just kind of like shanked me a little bit. But she said, you're so excited to get to this level, you don't even know the weight that's required to maintain that level. She was like, you're looking at this like, I deserve to be there, I deserve to be there. But there's a weight for the place that you want to go to. There's a weight for getting back outside, because things change. Things have changed. There are things that have been going on, and there are things, and y'all know we can have this talk all night. But there are things that go on that you can see with your physical eye, but there are things that go on that you can't see with your physical eye. So there are things that are always going on. So there is a weight to that, and you've got to learn how to lift that weight successfully before you go up to the next weight class. For all my weightlifters, before you go into the next what you call this little thing, the next division, for all my little athletes, before you go to the next level, for all my people that want to have that professional development, there's a weight for it. WEIGHT, but there's also a weight, WAIT, for it.
absolutely. Absolutely. We have a question from the audience. Is anxiety, in your experience, more prevalent in women than in men or in children?
Woo! Um, wow. In my experience, um, I am going to be honest and say that it is an equal balance between men and women. And then that balance remains with how children are taught, because children only do what they are taught. Like it's learned behavior. And you have to understand that even us as adults, we grew up with what we learned. It wasn't
Right.
anything that we picked up on our own. It was what we learned, and mostly it's what we learned based on the environments that we're in and the people that we are around. So to answer your question, I would say there's an equal balance between men and women, and I would say that everybody displays it differently. Everybody displays it differently. And I know a lot of people are like, well, men, they don't express their feelings. They don't da 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 da. They do. You just don't know how to understand their language.
That is
Because when you
absolutely
understand the
true.
language, and I'm here, right? I have a male child, so I'm like, I'm learning about the species. I'm listening to Miles Monroe, The Purpose of a Man, the purpose of a woman, and things of that nature. But I want to go back to the question about the anxiety in children for a minute, because children need security. And the reason that a child would have anxiety is because they do not feel secure. And the one way that anxiety always uh, begins to tell itself in the child it'll be issues with their stomach. So they'll have like pains in their stomachs. It'll be anything with like gastation. I think that's how you say that. Just what is it? Uh, Not indigestion. It's when you are gosh, I can't even think of the word. But there's a lot there. It's always my stomach hurts. You know, it's never somebody hurt my feelings or somebody said something mean to me or, an adult said something mean. It's always, oh, my stomach hurts or my head hurts. And they're always just kind of laying up under you. And so when those signs begin to show themselves, there's a twofold now because we talked about the spiritual and the practical. You absolutely if you have not been, you absolutely need to be praying over your child. And then you need to open up more avenues of communication with your child or with the children that you're leading. Because I know not everybody has children, but some of us are like educators. I'm an educator. I've been in education for the past 3 years. So you need to open up more avenues for them to just be honest. For them to just be honest, no emotional feedback from you, just for them to be honest. And then some things you take to God, you don't, and it's just a lot. We could really have we could go on for like 5 hours talking about this.
I'm sure, but we only have an hour. But one of the
Right?
yes, so one of the questions, well, you were just talking about how it shows up in children. That's, we call it that somatic symptoms, where your physical body manifests what's going on with you emotionally and mentally and spiritually. And so even in adults, we have somatic symptoms. We'll have migraines, or we'll have back pain that's unexplainable. We'll have, weight gain or weight loss, or we have ulcers or things like that. So anxiety will show up, in chronic illness. One of the questions is, can anxiety cause other issues like chronic stress? Or yeah, absolutely. Because anxiety, because it's tied to your emotions, and your emotions are tied to your spirit, and your spirit is tied to your heart and your head and all that stuff. All of those things will create symptoms in your physical body that people don't even realize that that's where they come from. So let's ask people, or let me ask you, Epiphany, when we're
Yeah,
talking
that's
to adults, huh? when
go ahead.
when
I'm
we're
listening.
talking when we're talking to adults about anxiety, and they don't realize it, they don't have an awareness of it, those are those are some of the symptoms that they can look to. I remember when my husband and I, before we got married, he was complaining that, he said, before, I had chronic back pain. It would take me out. It would take me, three days to a week to get myself together from back pain. And I told him, that's stress, because you haven't had that kind of back pain since we've been together. Would you agree? Are you there?
I would. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear
Yes. Can
you.
you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, got you. I absolutely would agree. I would say that um, a lot of time, what I found with myself, and I'll just say it this way, what I found with myself was that anxiety was the starting point, but there were so many other things that came as a result of the anxiousness that were undealt with. And so any emotion that is undealt with will begin to cause an ailment in your body, and it will manifest. It will manifest in the way that you eat. It will manifest in the way that, for those of you all that have partners, it will manifest in your libido. Either you are overly I don't even think, I was about to say libations. I don't think that's a word, but um, you either and I always say anything that's done in moderation can be done in excess, right? And so if there is no moderation in anything
Right.
that you are displaying, then there are some undealt with emotions, and there are some conversations that you need to start having.
Wow. So let's slip to you real quick, because we have about 15 minutes. Talk about your journey to true self, as it relates to you're dealing with your anxiety?
Got you. So I would say that the biggest thing for me, and I have, and I just want to say for all of you all that feel like you're strong, you can take a lot. That is not an okay position to be in, because you really send a message to say, "Come and hurt me," right? And that's never the way that you should live life. You should never live life with the expectation that somebody's going to hurt you, with the expectation that they're going to disappoint you. And I'm saying that because I have always considered myself to be a pretty strong person. And I would always tell people, not much you can do. There's not much you can do to me to hurt my feelings. I'm pretty strong. I can see it, be who you are. And, if you hurt me, that's okay, because I'll just walk away. I'll shrug it off and I'll just walk away. But what I had to understand was that those things were actually planting seeds, right? And so the things that people were doing, the things I was allowing people to do, were actually planting seeds. And my breaking point came when I allowed a person to come into my life. And I mean, they just rummaged everything, and broke my heart so deeply that I knew that if I did not deal with this, if I did not start having conversation, if I did not start getting the proper knowledge, that I would meet my demise. Like, I would bring myself to my demise through the way that I would try to numb this pain, through the way that I would try to run away from it, through everything. And so I really just fell apart. And I is I have this saying, as a spoken word artist, we always try to be deep, right? So I have this saying that says, I crumble under the rubble of who I am not, only to discover who I truly am. And so it was with my life just completely falling apart. The things that I was doing, the direction that I was going in, just completely. And when I say completely, I mean completely falling apart, to the point that, like, I had tears and conversations from my mom that were getting me through, and I really had to, and I was just like, God, this is so unfair. I was just like, this is so unfair. I'm such a great person. I don't do anything bad to people. I'm a good, I don't know how this could happen to me, blah, 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 blah. And then when I got to that point, then I had to be open to receive the answers. Because until you are ready to hear, I think there's a scripture that says, like, how can they hear unless one has been sent? Unless somebody with the answer has been sent to them, how can you hear? So, but until you're ready to hear, if you're continually making excuses, if you're continually doing what you want to do and not really being open and receptive to it, you're just in that WAIT, that waiting period, until you get the proper knowledge and you get the proper understanding. And I just cried out and I was like, God, I just really need you to help me. Like, I don't understand how. And then what I realized was that it was a cycle, right? So I don't understand how this continually happens to me. How do I continue? Why do I keep choosing this person? Why do I keep surrounding myself with these people? Why do I keep thinking lower than what I know I'm destined to be? And so I really had to have some very challenging conversations. I am in therapy. I'm an advocate for therapy. I appreciate everybody that says, well, you pray, and I do pray, but I also go to therapy because the type of person that I am, I need objective conversation from someone who knows nothing about me, from someone who has no biases or any reason to try and hurt me or spite me with the information that they're telling me, but they're going to point me in the right direction. And then because I do pray, I know enough to take that information and judge the spirit by the spirit, right? And what I mean when I say judge the spirit by the spirit is look at what they're telling me, look at what God has told me, look at what is resonating with the direction that I'm trying to go in my life, and then everything that is in alignment with that, put that into practice.
Right.
I just finished.
That's some good stuff, ladies and
And
gentlemen.
so I really
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, we have been talking with Miss Ashley Epiphany. Today, we're talking about anxiety, the process of becoming, and just wanted to just chime out there to all of you all who've been watching, who have been listening. You can certainly catch the replay of this show on Life Matters with Michele on YouTube. That is Life Matters with Michele TV official. You can like, share, and subscribe. You can also listen to the Audible playback every Friday at 4 o'clock p.m. on www.sensationalsoundsradio.net. Once again, that is every Friday at 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on www.sensationalsoundsradio.net. And again, you can watch us on YouTube at Life Matters with Michele TV official. If you would like to be a guest on the show, I have only two slots left in October, and then I'll be scheduling people for November. So if you'd like to be a guest on the show, please reach out to me at www.iam-mij.com/contact us. Awesome. If you want to reach out to Miss Ashley, you can reach out to her at Ashley, ASHLEY, So Ashley Epiphany. So you can certainly reach out to her, and her website, you can certainly find her on her website, which is www.theartistecard.com/Epiphany's words. Once again, we have been talking with Miss Ashley Epiphany, and she has been sharing with us the truth about anxiety, where it comes from, some of the triggers, some of the myths. And we are just so excited to have her on the show. We can do this all day long, but we don't have the time to do it on today. Miss Ashley, I want to thank you once again for joining me on the show. If you had any one last final piece of advice for the people, what would that be?
My last piece of advice is just be open to the process, because life gets more beautiful as you go along.
Beautifully said. And I believe that, and that resonates with my heart, and hopefully everybody who's watching and listening, because you got to let life unfold, but you got to breathe through it. That's what I tell my clients. That's what I tell the people I teach. That's what I tell my son, my husband. You got to just breathe through it. Not saying it's not real in the moment, but you got to breathe through it, because don't let anxiety kill you. Okay. So once again, we have been talking to Miss Epiphany. We have been sharing with her about anxiety, and we hope that you all can tune in again and watch us on YouTube. Once again, catch the replay on Life Matters with Michele TV official on YouTube. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can also catch these shows every Friday at 4 o'clock p.m. on www.sensationalsoundsradio.net. Reach out to Miss Ashley at www.artistecard.com/Epiphany's words. Thank you, my dear, once again for coming on and for joining us. Thank you to all of our viewers, all of our listeners. We certainly love and appreciate you taking the time to join us on today. And we want to just also always remind you that what matters in your life, it most certainly matters to me. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and do have a blessed day. And we'll see you again next time.